Hey, is this thing on? Hello? Hit it again. I think it's on now. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, where each week, Doc will drag some colorful characters out of the woods to talk trail and Type 2 fun. If you're aspiring hiker trash, or if you're just looking to understand the hiker trash in your life, look no further. So lace up those boots, gnaw on some jerky, and settle into your 20-mile pace as we fire up the podcast from somewhere deep in the backcountry. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail, dirtbags, hiker trash, and of course, good-smelling day hikers. I'm Doc, and this is the John Freaking Muir Pod. Hey, if you like what we're doing here, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, help us move up the charts. And if you don't like it, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right. Let's get to this week's guest, a thru hiker with a passion for protecting the outdoors, Justin Hick. How's it going, Justin?
It's going great. Thanks for having me, Doc. I love your backdrop. Love a good mountain backdrop.
Yeah, that is Evolution Lake with Mount Darwin and Mount Mendel on this side. There you go. It's mirrored on my feed, so it's always tough for me to figure out which way I'm pointing with the background behind me.
Nice. Where is that?
That's in the Sierras. That's off of the John Muir Trail.
Okay, perfect.
Now tell us about your background, because if our listeners are just listening and they're not tuning in on YouTube, they have no idea what we're talking about. But Justin, describe what's behind you.
Yeah, so I'm in the Canadian Rockies, and I snapped this photo kind of in the as you're entering in the Canadian Rockies, you get this kind of all the rivers coming through, and then some beautiful mountains in the backdrop. So I'm standing on a bridge taking a picture over the river with the mountains in the backdrop, and I love this shot. Just everything kind of turned out nicely with it, and I'm pretty lucky to have the Canadian Rockies right in my backyard, living here in Calgary and being able to get out there within 45 minutes.
Yeah, that is glorious to look at. You must get sick of that view.
Yeah, all the time.
Now, Justin, you've put a lot of miles under your shoes there. Have you picked up a trail name along the way?
I haven't. So the only through hike I've done is the Great Divide Trail, and I started a month after the bubble. So most people start that trail at the beginning of July. I started at the beginning of August, and just I didn't see anybody really, so I never was able to pick up a trail name. There's times where I spent between 6 and 8 days alone without seeing another human, and that was just kind of the way it was.
Nice. I mean, there's something to be said about hiking and having nobody else around. I mean, it is a surreal, just epic experience.
Yeah, I was thinking about it when I was in those moments, and I don't think there's been any other point in my life where I've spent that amount of time without seeing another human. It's unprecedented, really.
Okay, well, we usually go by trail names, but since you don't have one, we'll go by Justin. That's totally fine. Are you on the market for a trail name?
I feel like I need to earn one. See what comes along on trail. I know my friend Jesse, who hiked the Great Divide Trail at the same time as me, but was a little bit ahead. He toyed around with a few, but none of them really stuck. So I think yeah, we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll get on another long trail, and something will stick.
Okay. Hey Justin, have you had a chance to listen to the John Freaking Muir Pod before?
I haven't had a chance yet. It's on my list though. I have it followed, and I don't. I have no idea. I actually kind of enjoy it. I know when guests come on my podcast, they say, "Oh, I haven't listened before." I'm like, "That's okay. You're coming in fresh, and
that's right.
Everything's going to be a bit of a surprise to you, and you get that fresh reaction." So it's always interesting.
Nice. Well, hey, I'm going to give you a heads up that we have a segment towards the end of the podcast called the Hiking Hack. And that's where you get to share some of your trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better. So don't be surprised when we get there. Have something ready to go. Okay.
I already have one. It's good.
Okay. All right. Hey, don't give it up early. If you give it up early, you have to come up with a new one at the end. So, all right.
Trailblazers Toolkit.
That's right. It's time for the Trailblazers Toolkit, sponsored by the ultralight backpacking gear company 6 Moon Designs. Justin, I love to talk about gear on the podcast, and I love to hear about the most important item in my guest's adventure gear. If you were preparing for your next adventure, and I was the one providing you with all your gear, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? Give me all the specifics and tell me why you've got to have it out there. This can be any type of item. It could be gear, it could be apparel, it could be a luxury item. So, Justin, what is that item in your toolkit?
So that's going to be my backcountry bidet. That's been a game changer for me. I switched over probably about a year ago, and then about 8 months ago, I started using it all the time. Unless there's a scenario where I have to use toilet paper, I'm using the backcountry bidet, and I feel so much cleaner. I'm not having to kind of take little baths or use wet wipes. It's better for leave no trace, and yeah, it's been a game changer for me, and I'd never leave home without it again.
I am always so excited when my guest says that we talk about bidets, that they use bidets. I am fascinated by this. I am fascinated. I said in the intro that you are passionate about protecting the outdoors. This, of course, is one way to do that, because you're not burying paper out there in the backcountry, and so. Yep. You're using the backcountry bidet. I have questions. I always have questions about this, about how long did it take to perfect your aim with the backcountry bidet? Does it really work? I mean, is it just as good as toilet paper in terms of, getting clean? Lots of questions out there.
How much of the nitty gritty do you want? Because I can get pretty graphic with this. And I guess the short answer is I feel a lot cleaner. It's essentially like having a little bath for your butt while you're out there. And it took some practice. Like it was probably a solid 3 to 4 months of consistent use and practicing at home in the shower and trying to get everything figured out so that there wasn't like just giant spray of feces everywhere, and that I was getting clean and getting everything off. But the big difference maker for me was introducing soap and then just essentially using one hand as kind of to clean everything up. So I have one hand holding a water bottle, getting water introduced into that area, and then the other hand with soap is cleaning things up. And then I wash my hands afterwards thoroughly, and then throw on some hand sanitizer, and everything's nice and clean. But everywhere. Yeah, it's great.
Okay. I enjoy getting into the nitty gritty. If our guests find this a little distasteful, just fast forward a couple minutes. We'll still be here. And maybe I'll put an E on the episode as explicit. But, this is stuff that people want to know. How do you use a bidet? So I like the fact that you use it in the shower ahead of time. Practice with it. Practice makes perfect. And it sounds like with the other hand involved, it's almost like you're in the shower on any normal day, and you're washing your regions, right? And you wash your hands afterwards. So exactly. If there's more to it than that, and there's more nitty gritty detail, please, by all means, get into it.
I think that a lot of people, when they see the bidet and they see the kind of, usually a lot of them have just a little nozzle on it that looks like it's going to spray water, and it can spray water at a very high velocity. The other thing was I stopped really like spraying the water really hard, because that just resulted in a poo explosion everywhere, and it was pretty messy. So I now I just kind of gently introduce water from above. So I'm not like holding it in front of me, I'm holding it behind me. And then kind of putting it at the water's going to the top of the crack, kind of funneling into the danger zone. And the other hand comes in, and something to like make it a little bit more similar to being at home and having a shower is I now use a Kula cloth to just kind of dry up afterwards. And because there's soap and water involved and everything's hygienic, that can be reused and just kind of to dry everything out, so you don't have to stand there with your butt in the air drying off with air drying.
Now, Justin, I'm always entertained by what I encounter during the course of my day that I didn't expect. When I woke up this morning, I can tell you that I did not expect to hear these phrases. I did not expect to hear giant spray of feces. I didn't expect to hear poo explosion or funneling it into the danger zone. I mean, that is great. My life is complete right now. Fantastic.
I'm glad you summarized those, because it didn't click. Those are some good ones. Those are some good phrases.
That's right. And this is dangerous, because I'm always on the lookout during the episode, during the interview. I'm looking for the trail name of the episode. Right. So somewhere in our conversation, that I'm going to pick out a phrase that really resonates with me and kind of the substance of this interview. I hope it's not poo-splosion.
That's what I was just thinking. I was like, please, fingers crossed, don't be poo-splosion.
Yeah. We'll be on the lookout for something else. All right. Yeah. Fantastic. So is that the brand name of the bidet? Is it Backcountry Bidet?
It's a Kulo. The one I like the most is the Kulo Clean. It's very easy. Just it goes on any water bottle. So I use smart water bottles when I'm out there. So you just unscrew the cap, stick the Kulo Clean in there, and then you can use that. And it's probably, it weighs under an ounce, so it's very, very lightweight. There's a couple other ones that are similar in lightweight usage, and there's dedicated ones that you can get too that are more geared towards people who use them at home or while they're traveling. But I like the simplicity of the Kulo Clean. Okay.
Has there ever been a horrifying accident where you forgot to take the bidet off and then you took a drink out of it later?
Not yet.
Okay.
Because the way that I wash my hands is I take the Kulo Clean out and then I drink the water that's left in the bottle, and then I slowly just kind of like not really spit it out of my mouth, but then I just kind of trickle it out of my mouth over my hands so I can use both hands in order to wash my hands with the soap. Otherwise, it's really hard to like be pouring water with one hand, trying to like one hand scrub. That's
well, Justin, strategy. I appreciate this conversation because we've talked about bidets a few times on the podcast, and I've always had a very kind of nebulous idea of what is actually going on. I have for better or worse, I have a very clear picture of you in this whole process of how it all works. So thank you.
Perfect. I think it's important to kind of remove the curtain from the whole process, because I think there's a lot of people just have troubles picturing what it is, or they go out there and they try it out in a way that they think is going to work, and then things go badly. And most people out there aren't going to spend 3 to 4 months trying to perfect this system like I did. So yeah, happy to share.
We love to learn from our guests. Excellent. All right. Hey, I love talking about gear, and to keep us talking about gear,
it's the hiking pole.
It's the hiking pole, and that's pole spelled P-O-L-L, like a survey, not like the thing you hold in your hand out there. I explain that in every episode. I explain it just like that because I think I'm pretty darn clever coming up with a hiking pole on a hiking podcast. And your reaction is pretty standard. It's kind of like, yeah, okay, what's the big deal? Okay, yeah, you're not that clever. Got it.
It was good. I like a good pun.
Now, this is a 7-question survey that helps me give you a score on the sanity scale from 1 to 100, with 1 being completely insane and 100 being completely sane. Now, anybody who's done a long trail like the Great Divide Trail, there's an automatic 25-point deduction. So your top score possible tonight is 75.
What's the average? What's the median score?
It really depends on who I'm talking to. I talked to some people who initially, before I start the interview, I'm thinking I was a little biased that I think, this person's going to be really out there, and they score 60 or 70. And others who I thought were really sane, when I started talking to them, I get down to the nitty gritty and they're like in the 30s. So it's kind of hit and miss.
Interesting. All right. Do you have one written down? Do you have a guess written down right now for where I'm gonna end up before we go through the survey?
Typically, what I do is I ask my guests, if I were to ask a close friend or a family member where they would put you on that scale, where do you think they would say?
That's a tough one, because I think people who know me in my hiking life would probably say close to like 30, but people who don't know my hiking life would probably say like 80. So it's in the normal world, in air quotes there, you come across as a pretty normal guy. Pretty sane. Yeah. A little weird, but sane. Yeah.
Yeah. You fit in for the most part. Okay. Well, I'll be the judge of that. There's no rhyme or reason to this. I'm going to ask you 7 questions. They're all hiking related. And, some of the answers, there's no right answer. You're crazy either way, but it's just, how many points you lose, depending which direction you go.
Sounds good.
Okay. Question number 1, easy one. When you're out there hiking, trekking poles or no trekking poles?
Trekking poles.
And we always prefer a little explanation to help me adjust my score.
Okay, so it's not necessarily rapid fire. It's okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Partly, I'm getting up there in age. I'm turning 37 this year, and the knees aren't what they used to be. So I like the trekking poles to take some load off the body. I feel a lot better at the end of the day, but I also use trekking pole tents. So it makes sense to have the trekking poles for my body as well as the setting up the tents afterwards. So yeah, two birds, one stone.
All right. And I got news for you. 37 is not getting up there. Not yet.
I feel up there sometimes.
Youngster. All right. Question number 2. What's on your feet? Boots or trail runners?
Trail runners. And that's partly because for the same kind of reason. It just feels a lot better on my body. I've had issues with plantar fasciitis as well as ankle issues. And I find the trail runners just have my feet feeling happier as well as kind of my entire posterior chain when I'm out there. And there's just, I haven't found I wear hiking boots in the wintertime and then kind of in shoulder season if it's wet. But if I had my druthers, I'd be wearing trail runners when I'm out there all the time.
All right. Now you are the second Canadian that I've interviewed that used the term shoulder season. And I have to confess, I had never heard of shoulder season prior to that interview with Mark Scott. And I asked him, I said, what is shoulder season? And he was kind of like, he didn't have a clear definition of shoulder season. I think he kind of got to it. Of course, I didn't know what it was, and I looked it up afterwards. And so, do you have a definition for shoulder season?
My like knee jerk definition is the season of the part of the year that kicks your butt in a big way because you don't know what it's going to be out there condition wise. It could be cold, it could be snowing, it could be raining. You never really know what you're going to get. But I guess technically it's probably the time in between winter and summer where you do kind of have that nebulous season change.
That's right. It's kind of off peak. It's not peak season. So it's kind of in between like that. Very good. Nice job, Justin. You passed that question. It didn't count towards the survey, but you passed that question. All right. Do you have a favorite brand of trail runners?
I use Hoka Speed Goats. So Hoka, I like, I wouldn't say like Hoka is my favorite brand of trail runners, but the Speed Goats are my favorite trail running shoe that I've used. I've tried a whole bunch of different ones. That one just fits my foot well and then has good traction and breathability, dries fast.
Yeah, it's got a lot of grip to it. I have a pair of Speed Goat 5s that I picked up for a trail marathon that I ran a few weeks ago, and no break-in period whatsoever. I mean, you put them on and you can just go. I mean, they're excellent shoes.
Exactly. Yeah, the Mega Grip, Fiber Mega Grip is magical. I love that stuff.
All right. Question number 3. When it comes to overnight and shelters, are you tent guy, tarp, hammock, bivvy, or hey, let's just cowboy camp?
Tent. I like tents. I have a few different tents, but yeah. So it depends on the option. I've never hammock camped. Bivvies. I feel like with the weight, like I don't think I even know of a bivvy that is lighter than kind of like a Dyneema ultralight tent. Or they're very similar at least. So most of the time I'm using an ultralight Dyneema tent when I'm out there. If I'm trying to go ultralight, if I'm out kind of on a comfort trip, or if I'm with my fiance, then I'll bring a much bigger tent or just have more space and be comfortable.
Right. Now, what is your trekking pole tent? What brand?
So I usually use the Z-Packs Plex Solo. That's been my go-to. I like the fact that because it uses one trekking pole, if one of my trekking poles breaks, then I have redundancy with my second trekking pole. And I know their trekking poles have broken, and sometimes you're not in an area, maybe you're in the desert or something where you can't get a stick, or you're camping in the alpine area. So I really like that redundancy, but I recently tested out the Durston X-Mid 2 Pro, and that tent kind of blew me away. It uses 2 trekking poles, which isn't ideal for me, but it's super spacious. It's lightweight, like really well designed. And I have a feeling that tent might replace the Duplex as the most popular tent on the long trails over the next couple of years, because it's really, really refined.
Yeah. Durston is really, I'm hearing their name more and more. I mean, they're an up and comer. Yeah.
And Dan lives down the road from me. He's like a 4-hour drive into the mountains. Fellow Canadian guy, so like to support him, as well as he's hiked the Great Divide Trail a whole bunch of times, and one of these days I'm going to go visit him at his shop and kind of chat gear for a while.
Nice. We exchanged some DMs on Instagram about possibly being an advertiser, and he politely declined. I should have figured he was Canadian because he was very polite about it. And but still, I like to give him a shout out there because he makes some good product.
Yeah, yeah. Probably threw some thank yous and sorries in there with the DMs, right?
That's right. That's right. All right. Question number 4. When it comes to sleeping, you sleeping bag guy or quilt?
Quilt for 3 season. Sleeping bag in the winter time, because up here it gets down to -40 pretty often. So they don't really make quilts for that kind of temperature, but quilt in the summer all the time.
Now, what is the coldest it's been when you've been out hiking?
-50 degrees Celsius, which is I think like -60 degrees Fahrenheit, somewhere in there. So I've done that twice.
You were out hiking in -60?
That was the overnight temperature. So it was like just a bit warmer than -40 when I was hiking.
Holy smokes! What does your kit look like in -60? What are you wearing? And what are you sleeping in?
It's heavy. It's probably about a 45 to 50 pound pack. I'm wearing a full parka with like fur hood, and then another synthetic puffy underneath that, and then fleece, and then like merino wool or synthetic, and then same kind of layering on the pants. And then a lot of the time you basically are getting to camp, setting up camp, eating, and then going to bed, because it's you can't really sit around in those kind of temperatures. You have to be getting your sleeping bag, and then you're in your sleeping bag for the next 14 to 16 hours because there's not a lot of daylight.
Now that is the danger zone. You're talking -60. Anything goes wrong, I mean, you're in a lot of trouble.
Well, yeah, the coldest trip that I did where it hit that, the oil in my car froze. So I wasn't able to drive out. My girlfriend had to come pick me up. And then I had to drive back out into the mountains to get my car once it warmed up to a balmy -20 degrees Celsius.
Now that is a true test of love if you get your girlfriend to come out and pick you up in that kind of weather.
Yeah, exactly. That trip, I just so people don't think I'm reckless, I was very careful. I had my inReach with me, which I kept on me and warm all the time, and I was about 3 kilometers, or like a mile and a bit, into the backcountry, but also just down the road from the emergency services response team for that mountain area. So if I had pressed the SOS, they probably could have been at my location within an hour for sure. So that was all planned.
-60 for an hour. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, when it comes to food, stove guy, cold soak, or stoveless?
Stove guy. Yeah. I've tried cold soaking, and I've unless I'm solo, I've been banned from cold soaking with all the people that I backpack with. Because otherwise I have to hike at the back of the line. It just doesn't sit well with my insides, and dropping landmines the entire time I'm hiking with it.
There you go. There's another episode title: dropping landmines. I sense a theme on this episode.
Yeah, it's important. You got to keep your insides and the outsides of your insides running along in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 main topics on the trail when you're out there for extended periods. You're talking about what you're going to eat when you get back to civilization, and you're talking about bodily functions.
Yeah,
right. I mean,
it's true. That's exactly it.
All right. Question number 6: is life better above or below the tree line?
Above the tree line. I like getting up there, and there's nothing quite like a really good ridge walk. Like, you get above the tree line, you're walking on some sort of ridge for the day, and it's pretty cool. Yeah, I love that.
Okay, me too. Good answer. That's one of those questions where there's no right answer. I agree with you on it, but we're a little bit crazy to prefer life at that altitude. So
yeah, well, here the altitude is pretty low in the Canadian Rockies. Like it maxes out at 11,000 feet. So we don't have anything above that, and those are like the big peaks. Most of the time people are staying probably under 9,000 feet, kind of between 8,000 and 9,000. So we're not getting hit with a lot of elevation sickness and things like that. The mountains are just rugged. Like, people will come to climb the 11,000 footers here to train for like Everest and K2 and stuff because of how rugged the mountains are. They just don't get the kind of elevation training for their cardiovascular system.
You Canadians, you're a rugged folk.
Yeah.
Question number 7, our last question in the poll. What is more important, pack weight or luxury items?
That's a tough one. I'm gonna have to lean towards pack weight because, but it's to a degree. Like if you had a gun to my head and you had to say like would you rather sleep on a like 1/8 inch thick foam mat or bring like a 3-pound sleeping pad that's going to be comfortable? I would pick the comfortable sleeping pad. But if it was between like if I could bring an X-Lite or something, then that'd be great. So that's a tough one, yeah, because I like getting a good night's sleep. That's the biggest thing for me. Like I want my pillow, I want my nice sleeping pad, I want my quilt. But I can live with like a BRS tiny titanium stove and stuff like that.
All right. So did we get a clear, definitive answer from you on that?
I don't know. I'm gonna say wait, just because I am more comfortable on trail when I'm hiking, and I'm more of a hiker than I am a camper. So if I have to like process it down to that, then it's gonna be wait. Yeah.
I like that analysis you did right there. I'm more of a hiker than I am a camper. And so that's you're going to go with. You're going to go with pack weight.
Yeah.
Now, what is your base weight? When you're on the Great Divide Trail, what was your base weight?
On the Great Divide Trail, it was 10 pounds. And that was in order to be comfortable and prepared for temperatures down to 20 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 6 degrees Celsius. And it got that cold later on in the trip. So it could have been a lot lighter if it wasn't for that.
10 pounds, if you're talking about your basic hiker out there, 10 pounds is pretty darn light. And that was your 20 degree Fahrenheit kit. That's impressive. Nice job. Do you break your toothbrush in half? Do you drill holes in it, or do you just not bring a toothbrush?
I bring like probably a relatively heavy toothbrush. It's just a plastic folding toothbrush. I like to have a full handle in order to brush my teeth, and that one just kind of keeps everything protected within the folding aspect. And I just keep that. From Jupiter hikes, I learned from him, like he keeps his toothpaste and toothbrush in his like pocket accessible, and then he brushes his teeth as he's hiking in the morning. So I did that all the time. That was my go-to system, and it works well. You're able to get moving very quickly.
Jupiter's been on the podcast a couple times. He is a very knowledgeable and talented guy.
Yeah, he's interesting. I'd love to have a conversation with him someday.
Now, I was thinking as we were talking about toothbrushing, you could, there's got to be a product out there that can double as both, multifunction, double both as a bidet and a water pick.
If you invent it, I'll try it. Try anything once.
I gotta get a trademark on that quick. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Stand by, Justin. I got to put your answers through the John Freaking Muirpod algorithm. Got to do some math here. I was an English teacher, so it takes me a little bit. So I got to carry the 2, going to multiply by pi, going to divide by root 5, and we're going to adjust for the pucker factor of a night at negative 60 Fahrenheit, and I come up with a score of 53.
Nice. That's pretty good. It's a good balance. Good balance number.
Yeah. I mean, you already start off at a deficit of 25 points, so I mean, you didn't lose a whole lot of points, and you're just north of that kind of that midway line.
Yeah, that sounds great. What was Jupiter? I'd
have to look back in the records. I'll see if I can get an answer for you.
I'd guess probably in that 30 to 40 range, especially with that like sleeping on 1/8 inch foam mats and stuff like that. That's crazy to me.
And carrying a yo-yo out there, I mean, that's an automatic 10-point deduction. So
that's a quarter of his base weight right there.
That's right. And, I was thinking when I said just north of the midpoint, since I'm talking to my friend to the north, it's kind of funny how language evolves and when things are going south, they're going bad. Right. And so it's kind of like, do I take offense at that? Now I'm in Southern California. Things are going south. And, if you're talking about being just north of the midpoint line, that implies, that's favorable, right? And so interesting how words evolve like that.
Well, I still can't wrap my head around the whether things are looking up or you're going downhill. You're going downhill, or you're like that whole thing still messes with me. I say it. I'm like, wait, was that positive or negative with that? How I phrase that? Yeah, right. Words are tough.
I imagine being a Canadian, you like that concept that north is good, because I mean, you guys are north.
Yeah, we're heading north. It's a good thing. Well, all the time people have their cabins or cottages up north. So when you're heading up north, it's usually for some sort of vacation or a weekend away and things like that.
Nice. All right. Hey, before we get too far down the trail, let's back up a little bit. I'd love to hear about your background, where you grew up, what kinds of sports and hobbies you played as a kid, and how did you get involved in the thru hiking cult?
So I grew up, so now I live in the Canadian Rockies now. I grew up on the eastern central side of Canada, where there's a lot of lakes and rivers. So I wasn't backpacking isn't as big of a thing out there. So I started off doing a lot of canoeing and canoe tripping, and went on multiple like week-long canoe trips, a month-long canoe trip. So that was what I was doing growing up. And then it was when I moved out here where I started backpacking, because we have the mountains. There's not a lot of rivers out here, and it's backpacking is amazing. So that's been going on for about 10 plus years now, and fell in love with it. Always been like a hiker, outdoors person. I worked in the outdoors as an environmental scientist for most of my career, before quitting that to become a full-time YouTuber. But that got me outside a lot, like using a lot of different gear and things like that. And then as I was hiking and kind of pushing my limits and wanting to test myself, I started seeing like thru hikes, and was following Darwin and Dixie and those other kind of big thru hikers, and really got inspired to want to try a thru hike of my own. And I was limited by time with a job, so I was only able to take off about a month of work. So took the time off, hiked the Great Divide Trail, and loved it. I don't know if I'd be the type who would do like a 4, 5, 6 month trip at this point in my life. But the Great Divide Trail, yeah, it was an amazing journey, and learned a lot about myself and developed a lot of skills. It was pretty amazing.
Now, do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have a little sister. Yes.
And is she also a YouTuber?
She's not. She does not like the spotlight at all. She has a government job, lives out on the East Coast, and I don't know how she'd feel about being on the channel. I've had my parents on the channel. We did a trip together, and I videoed them, and they're hilarious. But I'm not sure about my sister. I'm sure she'd be a great sport. She's an amazing person, but not a YouTuber.
Now, so that's always interesting to me, how kids who grow up in the same household kind of end up in different places. But what did your parents, what were their reaction when you said, you know what, environmental scientist, I'm going to leave that behind so I can be a full-time YouTuber?
They weren't surprised. And it's kind of par for the course for me, I guess, of making what I think from the outside looking in, it looks like kind of a big decision that like is kind of rash, but they know me from growing up with me. They know that I probably had about 10 spreadsheets with a plan and a bunch of different documents ready to go, and had it really kind of planned out in a way that it was going to be successful. So they weren't surprised, and then they're supportive. They both ran businesses of their own when they were growing up, so they thought it was a great idea, and were right behind me the whole way.
How many followers on YouTube?
It's up to like 68,000, I think now, somewhere in there.
Congratulations! And are you living comfortably?
Yeah, it's great. It's better than an environmental scientist salary, which is good. And at this point, it's kind of the point where like I've chatted with my fiance, and I'm like, well, we're good now. If things go up, that's great. Maybe we can retire early, but we'll just kind of maintain this lifestyle and have a good life, and yeah, just keep living. It's a lot of fun. It's worth it.
Now, does she understand that, if you get a creative idea and it involves her, that she's just gonna have to sacrifice and be on the channel?
Yep, she's been on the channel a couple times, and there's some things where I'm like, how would you feel about this? And she's like, nope, veto. But if it's to take her out hot tenting, or bring some wine in and hang out by a lake and backpack, she's all in for that. And her last year we went on a trip, when I went on the trip with my parents, her parents came along too. So that was a fun journey with each of us, with our kind of parent-in-laws, and getting out there. It's great. Yeah. She loves backpacking and hiking as well.
See, that's why you Canadians are in the north. It goes so well. If we took a man and his girlfriend and their parents out on a hiking trip in America, that'd be the setting for a horror movie.
Yeah,
things would go south quick.
You could probably base an entire Netflix reality TV show around that.
Absolutely. Okay. Hey, speaking of paying the bills, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from our sponsors. We're going to come back and we're going to hear about some stories from the trail, not only the Great Divide Trail, but you got some other experiences too I want to delve into. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. And welcome back. We are talking to Justin Hick, who does not have a trail name currently and is really hoping it's not going to be something like Poo-splosion. We heard a little bit about your background. We did the hiking pole. Let's talk about some time out there on the trail now. I know you already mentioned a little bit about the Great Divide Trail. How long is the Great Divide Trail?
So that's a little over 700 miles, 1,100 to 1,200 kilometers. It's kind of like, kind of varies, because you finish the trail in the middle of nowhere at a lake, and then you have to hike 60 to 70 miles out from the lake to get to a road. So they kind of finished in a weird spot. And yeah, that was kind of, it was kind of anticlimactic almost. Like, you finish and you're like, yeah, I'm done. And then there's just no one around. You have to hike for another day. But yeah, beautiful ending.
Yeah, not quite as bad as the John Muir Trail, where you finish on top of Mount Whitney. And you're like, okay, I'm finished, but you're on top of, the highest mountain in the lower 48, and you still got to get down and hike another 9 miles into Lone Pine. So
yeah, I can imagine. It's right. You're up there, and like, have you? I imagine you probably hiked up to Mount Whitney. Then it's how's the air at 14,000 feet? Like,
it is slow moving. Let me tell you. I walk 50 yards, need to take a break. Walk another 50, take a break. I can't imagine how these guys are doing Everest or even Everest Base Camp or Kilimanjaro. I mean, that air has got to be really difficult.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's on my list. At some point, I'd like to do a 14,000. Maybe from Death Valley up to Mount Whitney. I think that's the lowest to highest point in the connected U.S. So that'd be kind of neat.
I think they have a trail race that does that. Are you a runner?
I like to run. I like to get out on, especially trail running. It's a little bit more fun than road running.
Yeah, Death Valley to the top of Whitney. Sounds like a good time.
Yeah. Especially for someone who's never been at that elevation before. It'll just go peachy.
So Justin, what kind of prep did you do leading up to the Great Divide Trail?
So I did a lot of prep, because I hiked it relatively fast. Most people hike it in about 2 months. I hiked it in a month. So I was averaging over 20 miles, over 25 miles, I think, a day. It was about 37 kilometers a day, with a lot of elevation. It's 160,000 feet of elevation gain over the course of the trail. And as I was in the gym doing squats and deadlifts and calf raises, really kind of working on my legs in the mornings, then every afternoon I was going out for runs. And during the day, I had a walking treadmill that I set my work laptop on. So I'd be walking on the treadmill with my pack on, responding to emails. So I did a lot of training, and it paid off. I was able to hit the ground running and didn't get too injured over the course of the trail. Because I was set with the Great Divide Trail. You're set. Like, you have to book all your campsites ahead of time. There's not like a permit for the entire trail, and you have to stick to that. So I couldn't miss it. I couldn't be moving days around or anything like that.
Yeah, I talked to Bridget Scott, wife of Mark Scott, also Canadian, and we talked about their trip on the Great Divide Trail and the process for booking those permits. She had 4 or 5 different friends set up on like 7 or 8 different devices, all ready to log in and book campsites through the system. It sounded absolutely bonkers. Have they improved the Canadian permit system at all since then?
No, it's the same. I think if anything, the way it's improved is that it's now like a queue system, so it's more just random luck. It's not so much like, is my computer going to crash or is the system going to crash? It's basically you get in the queue, you get your spot, maybe you win the lottery and you get a good, like a high number, or maybe you don't. So at least it's a little bit more fair in that sense. But the more computers you have, the more slots you have, and the higher the odds of getting a good spot. So I was doing the same thing. I think I had like 15 computers and phones ready to go, and I got lucky. I got a sub 1,000 spot, so I was able to book all my campsites without any issues.
Hey, things were looking up for you.
Yeah, that was yeah. Looking north.
Looking north. That's right. That's right. Now, you did a lot of prep. I mean, that is serious training before your hike started. What do you say to those folks out there who say, guys, it's just walking? You're just walking out there. I mean, what do you need to train for?
Yeah, I think I'd point them to the stat of the number of people who are unable to finish. Probably the Great Divide Trail, like all the long trails, really. I think the Great Divide Trail has like a 20% finish rate, which I think lines up with the other long trails pretty accurately. There are only about 100 people a year start the Great Divide Trail versus like 6,000 on the PCT or whatever it is. But so not a lot of people finish it every year.
Yeah, that percentage that does track with the completion rate for the others as well. So it doesn't matter how many are out there. I mean, that it still speaks to how difficult it is.
Yeah, and I think the number one thing that brings people off trail is injury. So if you're not prepped, you're more likely to be part of that stat of getting injured and having to get off trail. And I think you can do it in a way where you don't need to train, but you're probably you're having to accommodate really low mileage at first in order to build your body up to it. And that's because eventually your body just becomes a walking machine. And I remember when I got off the Great Divide Trail, I was like, okay, I'll go for a run. I ran about 1 kilometer before my body shut down, and my knees and my ankles and my back were like, nope, I'm not a runner. I'm a walker. You take me home.
That's right. Now, speaking of injuries on the trail, what do you carry in your pack to account for anything you might get injured out there?
Pretty basic stuff. Like I have ibuprofen, but I don't take that. I take that as like if I am injured in order to get out. It's more of like a self-rescue tool for me. Like I try not to mask injuries at all, because that just usually makes them worse. So I carry that for self-rescue, and then that's about it. Like if I have like some sort of cut or something like that, I have some Band-Aids for that. I also carry athletic tape, and leukotape for the blisters, and then athletic tape if I roll an ankle or hurt a joint in some way, then I can at least like wrap it and brace it in order to, again, self rescue. But yeah, there's not a lot of scenarios out there, I think, where I'd be able to get injured and then stay on trail. That'd be tough. So it's mostly things to be able to get off trail if I need to.
Got it. Now, did you hike it solo, or did you do it with a buddy or buddies?
I hiked it solo.
Wow. And was this your first serious through hiking experience?
That was my longest trip. Before that, 7-8 days was the longest I'd been out on trail. So yeah, 30 days was, and it ended up being 36 days, I think, was the final count.
Okay, so you show up to the trailhead, and what's going through your mind? What are you expecting from this experience? Are you going in fully confident, knowing you've got this nailed, or what's running through your mind?
Yeah, that was. I think at the time I was just kind of ready to start and kind of just see what the trail had to throw at me and what my capabilities were going to be. I'd spent about the previous year, I'd done a lot of therapy for a lot of different things, but part of it was expectation management and dealing with expectations and trying not to have expectations that can then either be like, bad explanation, but that really, I think, helped with the trail, as well as I talk I videoed the entire experience. I talked in the videos on trail about my mental health state and how therapy really kind of helped get me through a lot of different things as far as with resilience and everything. But yeah, at that start point, I'd put in so much prep. I was just kind of ready to get things going and hope that there's nothing unexpected that would take me out off the trail. And yeah, definitely dealt with like the imposter syndrome or like fear of failure and things like that throughout the trip. But at the beginning, it was mostly positive, and excitement more than anything.
All right, lot to unpack right there. Expectations are so important in whatever we do, right? If it's running, if I'm out on a run and I'm running 5 miles, and then somebody tells me, no, you got to do 7, I can do 7. But the fact that I started out with the expectation of doing 5, I mean, I'm ruined. It's so bizarre, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think if you go in with too high of expectations on something or too low of expectations, it can just absolutely ruin the experience. And so being able to manage your expectations and kind of leaning into the unknown, I think is an important skill.
Exactly. That's a great way to phrase it. Leaning into the unknown and accepting that there's unknowns and things out of your control. I think that's a key thing for me is I tend to like to have control over situations. And when there's things out of my control, that's when it starts giving me anxiety and things like that. So yeah, being able to just accept that I've prepared as best I can for this. There's things that are out of my control. Let's just kind of let it ride. It was very freeing. It was great. Yeah.
Yeah, you and I are a lot alike. I like structure as well. I like to plan stuff. I think that's half of the fun. Sounded like when you took the leap from environmental engineer to YouTuber, you had it all spreadsheeted out. You had it all planned, trying to account for every possibility. And you can do the same thing with a hike. You can plan it down. You can get down to the minute details of a hike, but you have to realize, and those folks who are listening, who are planners, who are structured like me and Justin, and you're getting ready to go on a big hike, you have to realize that as soon as you set foot on the trail, that plan can go out the window. You have to be able to be flexible and adjust because things change. Things don't go per plan out there.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was part of the reason why I trained, because I knew there's a lot of aspects that are out of my control. That was something that I could control that would likely buffer if things started going wrong. Like if I hit some sort of obstacle that was going to take up more time, I knew if I trained properly, then I'd be able to make up that time the next day and kind of account for it that way. But yeah, you never know. You can encounter a stream that you can't, a river that you can't cross, or you could get charged by a grizzly bear and lose your pack or something like that.
Speaking from experience on that one?
I was charged by a grizzly bear on the Great Divide Trail. That was probably the craziest experience that I had when I was out there, because it got within 10 feet of me. I sprayed it with bear spray, and luckily we both were able to run away from each other in the opposite directions. But its intent was to kill me when it charged. It wasn't bluff charging. It wasn't trying to scare me. It was, I'm gonna rip your head off and then eat you.
And so was the bear spray in your pack? Was it on your belt? How did that work?
So I kept it in my side pocket. The pack that I used was the Zerk 40, and it has like really accessible side pockets. That's kind of a deal breaker for me with packs now. If they don't have a accessible side pocket, then that's where I like to keep my water bottle. That's where I kept my bear spray. And I was able to just reach back, grab it, flick off the safety and spray it within about 4 seconds that it took from it seeing me and me seeing him to the charge. But I knew I was in bear, like the entire time. I kind of knew when I was in bear country, and I read the book Bear Attacks by Stephen Herrero as a environmental scientist. So I knew kind of what bear habitat looked like. So I knew I was in bear habitat. So when I'm in that kind of scenario, I'm always reaching back, making sure that I know exactly where my bear spray is, where my finger needs to go into it, in order to be able to deploy it as quickly as possible.
So Justin, I have to ask the question because I know your personality type. I feel like we're close right now. I've been with you in the shower as you've been practicing the bidet.
Yeah.
So, if you took that kind of prep time to learn how to use the bidet. What kind of practice did you do with the bear spray?
So I was lucky for work. We had to do bear training, like bear awareness training and bear encounter training. So I used like practice bear spray multiple times when I was going through that training. So I'd probably put in as much, if not more time with bear prep than I did with bidet prep. So I'd say that they're close to being on par, but the bear may edge out the bidet as far as difficulty and prep that's needed.
Okay, your score just went up 2 points because you identified bears are a little more important than bidets.
Slightly,
just slightly.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm wiping my butt more than I'm encountering bears on trail. So
right, but the danger, the ramifications of a failed bidet experience as opposed to a failed bear experience. I mean, those are very different places.
Well, it's you have to have your risk management balance on like the likelihood of something happening and then the consequences if that happens. That all goes into the risk management formula. And I've only been charged by a bear once where I've wiped my butt hundreds of times. So the likelihood of that happening is very high. The consequences might be a little bit lower, potentially.
Consequences. That was the word I was looking for. Consequences are very, very different. Chafe and dead is, that's two opposite ends of the spectrum. So,
yeah, exactly.
All right. So when you got off trail, when you finished, when you end up at that lake, what'd you learn about yourself on that trail?
I think I had a lot of gratitude for the ability to do that trail and finish it. That was that last day as I was finishing up, that was what was going through my mind a lot. It was just like, I'm in a very fortunate position to be able to like have this opportunity to be able to do this from like a circumstantial standpoint, but as well as just like a bodily ability standpoint, mental ability standpoint. And yeah, I was just thankful and grateful that I was able to finish the trail at that point in time. And get through it. So it was a special moment in that way. Just really kind of all that hitting home.
Okay. Now you've also had some experience on a much shorter trail, which maybe some of our viewers or listeners have seen on the show alone. It's called the West Coast Trail, and it's on Vancouver Island.
Yeah, it's much shorter, about 50 miles, 70-kilometer long trail. But it's right along the coast. You're hiking on beaches for about half the trail. The rest of it's in the rainforest. So you're climbing up and down ladders. And like you said, yeah, it's that area was on a loan, and people might remember like Jim Baird eating slugs during that season. And you encounter a lot of slugs. I can attest that those slugs are not being planted by producers. They're out there, and you can eat them. I haven't eaten one myself, but they're there.
Now, if you were going to eat a slug, do you eat it raw? Do you cook it? How does that work, Justin?
I'd probably eat it raw. I imagine if you tried to cook it, the insides would probably boil and then explode. So you maybe heat it up, but I feel like then it would just kind of be like a warm slug instead of just a cold slug. I don't know what the best bet is there.
Push comes to shove, do you eat a slug? If your life depends on it?
I'd eat a slug. Yeah, there's not much I wouldn't do, I don't think. Like I have a pretty tough stomach, and I won't stand next to a cliff. I have extreme fear of heights, but I'll eat a slug.
Justin, I'm going to call BS on that, because you told us earlier, if you're cold soaking, you got to stand at the end of the line. Where do you
That's
have
not
to
me
stand?
though.
Where do you have to stand if you're eating a slug?
Yeah, you're not even allowed on trail at that point, I guess. Probably it's those landmines are a little bit bigger and a little bit more explosive.
Sorry guys, slugs last night. Apologies.
Yeah.
Now, I heard when I was watching alone, they said that was the Vancouver Island had the highest density of cougars and black bears anywhere on the planet. Does that hold true? Did you have any of those experiences out there?
That checks out. I saw black bears. I've hiked the trail twice now. I've seen black bears both times. There's always black bear warnings. They're kind of cruising around. Black bears don't scare me nearly as much as grizzly bears. Most of the time, they're just big dogs trying to scavenge for food, and they're way more scared of us than than we are of them. So yeah, no big issues there, but it's outside of the wildlife, it's a dangerous trail. There's the stat is that there's a rescue off that trail every single day that it's in operation. And when I was there last year, I was there for 5 days and saw 7 or 8 helicopters that were rescuing people because it was raining. So people are falling off ladders. Someone got impaled on a branch. Yeah, it's a rough trail.
Now, you went through extensive bear training, as you said before. Different approach when you encounter a black bear versus a grizzly bear. What are you supposed to do in each situation?
Yeah, so with the black bear, it's really trying to make yourself not seem like prey, because if they're trying to get you, usually they're hungry and they're trying to eat you. They might be protecting your young, but mostly if you're big and scary and noisy, they're probably just going to run away and not want anything to do with you. Where with a grizzly bear, they're not going to be scared. Like, you're not going to be big enough. You're not going to be able to get big enough, stand on a log or raise your arms in the air and your trekking poles and be big enough to scare a grizzly bear away. So at that point, you're having to rely on your bear spray. But the best approach is preventative measures with the grizzly bear and black bears. If you're making a lot of noise as you're walking down the trail, being aware if the wind is coming in your face, whether you're next to streams. So that was the issue with me when I was on the Great Divide Trail and encountered the grizzly bear. I was walking uphill next to a stream with the wind blowing in my face, so it couldn't sense me coming at all. Otherwise, it probably would have taken off before I startled it. But it was in a berry bush, came around a corner, startled it, and then it charged. But yeah, grizzly bears, definitely just try and avoid them as much as possible and have bear spray if you can.
Yeah, you never want to surprise a bear, because you never know what's going to happen in that surprise situation. Be noisy, be cognizant of which way the wind is blowing. And if you do come across a grizzly, you surprise a grizzly, you don't have bear spray, what is the preferred method of survival?
That's to play dead, not be a threat to it. If it's going to eat you, you hope that it gets full before you're dead. That's kind of or try and fight it, but you're probably not gonna be able to fight it off if it's hungry enough to eat. You can try, but maybe if you have a knife or something like that. But a lot of times, just protect your neck, try and keep on your belly so that your vital organs are protected, and then hope it kind of wanders off. And there's been reports of people like having part of their arm eaten by a bear and then being able to call for help and surviving. If people want some like really good information, but some grizzly stories about bears, the book Bear Attacks by Stephen Herrero is pretty solid. He basically analyzes every bear encounter over the last 100 years, all the deaths and negative encounters, as well as what's worked for people surviving. And there's a lot of very, very good info in there.
What a horrifying statement. You hope that it gets full before you're dead.
Yeah.
Yikes. That's stuff of nightmares.
It's intense.
Right, I don't know if I can play dead while something is gnawing on me.
Apparently you kind of go into there's some interviews in the books with people who survived, and people talk about how they're in their safety position and the bear, they can hear and feel the teeth grinding against their skull as the bear kind of bites their head. But for most bears, their mouth isn't big enough to crush your skull, so they're only able to kind of chew on your head, but never actually crush your skull.
Okay, let's let's move on from the West Coast Trail. Have you done anything international?
So I've last summer, my fiance and I, Steph, we hiked the Tour du Mont Blanc in France. So that was amazing trail. Starts in Chamonix, then hikes through Italy, Switzerland, and then back to Chamonix in France. And it was a very different trail than what you encounter in the Canadian Rockies here and a lot of places I've backpacked in the States. But very, very fun, very interesting, and kind of wild in its own right.
Well, tell us about the difference. I mean, what can we expect differently out on Tour du Mont Blanc?
So it's just way more developed. So you can encounter a town almost every day, or at least every other day when you're on trail. There's little hostels, they call them refugios. So you'll hit those multiple ones a day, and you can stay in those. So some people, they'll hike the entire trail and not bring a tent at all, and they'll just stay in the refugios. They'll get their meals provided for them. It can be pretty cushy. We did half camping, half refugios, just to kind of get the full experience. And then halfway through, you hit kind of another major town, and you can stay at like a hotel there, resupply. And it's, even the mountains are different. Like the mountains aren't as rugged as we have here in North America, 'cause I think they're older mountains maybe. So there's grass everywhere on all the mountains. So it's like, it's when you picture like European mountains, it's exactly what it looks like. Whereas here we have just like rock everywhere.
Yeah, I've seen pictures. It's absolutely gorgeous, and that really sounds like glamping to me. I mean, if you can plan every day to end up in a hostel or a pub with a pint in your hand, I mean, how difficult could it be?
Exactly. And Steph and I, we got lucky that on most of our days around 2:00 in the afternoon, we were just hitting these refugios, and we'd have like a beer, sit on their patio and have a beer, and then continue with our hike. It backfired a couple times where we did that, and then we had like 2,000 feet of elevation to gain, and lugging a beer up that wasn't the most pleasant.
You took a sixer with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard similar commentary about the Camino de Santiago. Same thing. Lots of places to stay, lots of places to eat, have a drink. Just a very different pace and experience from life in the Canadian Rockies or in the US on the trails.
Exactly. Yeah. If you want remoteness, it's not the place to go. But I think what I really liked about it was you get that cultural experience with it, because you are seeing people and you're in towns, and these little Swiss towns are really, really quite neat. But then also if you're someone who maybe is on the older side, or you're not physically able to carry a tent and all the full amount of gear that you need for backpack, you can hike the Tour du Mont Blanc with probably about 10 to 15 pounds total in your pack, and be able to kind of do the trail a lot more easily.
10 to 15 pounds. I mean, you could do 0 degrees Fahrenheit that with your kit.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we're going to drag Steph into the conversation, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So I know Mrs. Doc. Mrs. Doc is my wife, obviously. Mrs. Doc, she refuses to go on any experience that requires her to poop in a hole, right? And so Steph, similar minded, did she use the bidet? Is she more toilet paper or wipes? I mean, is she all in it like you, or does she have some definite set points where she will not cross?
So she'll poop in the hole, but she's on the toilet paper wet wipe system still. I just haven't really kind of introduced her to the bidet fully yet. I wanted to make sure I had it really dialed in first before kind of bringing that into our relationship. I feel like that's one of those things where it's teaching someone how to wipe their butt that's intimate. And we're getting married in June, so in 1 month, almost 1 month from today, we're going to be married, and maybe that's something that we'll save for marriage.
Well, congratulations. That's probably wise that you save that little secret till after you got her to say "I do."
Yeah, exactly.
Now, what are the plans for the wedding? Are you going to be up in the Canadian Rockies somewhere on some beautiful vista, or is it more traditional?
It'll be more traditional. We're going to be in town here, just to make it easy for all our friends and family to be able to get here. I proposed to her on a mountaintop, on a volcano top. So we got that part covered as far as the marriage sequence goes. Fantastic.
Now you've done a little time in the States as well. I see on here on our list, U.S. deserts. Desert hiking and mountain hiking, very different experiences.
Very different, but it's kind of in line with, like, I like to be pushing my limits all the time and kind of moving the needle. And I feel like I've like I said, I've gone down to very cold temperatures. I haven't gone to extreme elevation because we don't have that here, but I've hiked some of the bigger mountains here. And I just want to kind of test myself. So a couple of years ago, I started going down to Arizona, the Las Vegas, Nevada area, and doing some backpacking around there, and really fell in love with it. But it's a different skill set. You really need to be on the ball with water and heat management in order to stay safe. So, and that's something I've never had to deal with before. There's water all over the place here. And yeah, it's the Arizona area is probably one of my favorite places that I've backpacked in the Superstition Mountains. It's not classically beautiful necessarily, but it has a vibe to it that's just very spiritual almost. I really enjoy getting down there.
Nice. Now, speaking of deserts and desert hiking, any desire to do something like the Pacific Crest Trail, with the first 700 miles is desert?
I think if I was going to do any of the long trails, it would probably be the Pacific Crest Trail at this point. It might be with the amount of people that are on it these days, it might be a little busy for me. So I might prefer the Continental Divide Trail. It might be a little bit more up my alley, in line with the Great Divide Trail, as far as people like still having a community around it, but not a ton of people all the time. But then again, I'd be open to kind of having that more community, large amount of people experience at the same time. I'm an introvert, but it would be interesting to like have a tramley and all that kind of thing. I think it'd be fun. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, you missed out on a tramley with the Great Divide Trail.
Yeah, it was just me, myself, and I out there. The three of us just hiking down the trail.
Made for some interesting conversation, I bet.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of singing as we hike together. Yeah.
And do you know all the words to some songs out there?
I got there because I had earbuds, so I'd listen to some songs, and then I know enough to kind of like be annoying. Like I can sing like the chorus of a bunch of different songs, and I just repeat that over and over. And I annoyed myself, to be honest. Like I'd be singing the same chorus and it just get stuck in my head. And I don't know if this happens to you, where you get into a rhythm, but the rhythm is like a song, and then you just are constantly singing the exact same song, the exact same like lyrics over and over as you're hiking, because you're just in that rhythm in the zone.
Yeah, you get stuck. You absolutely get stuck. And I quickly realized that I don't know the words to the complete words to any one song except for Happy Birthday. I know that one by heart, nice. But the rest of them, I'm with you. I'm singing the chorus the whole time, and I feel stupid.
Yeah, exactly. I know Free Falling. That's I know most of the words to Free Falling, and that was okay.
Okay. So I know the next big adventure for you is happening in a month with your upcoming wedding to Stephanie. What is the next big outdoor adventure for you?
The next big outdoor adventure, it's kind of up in the air right now. So we're getting married, and then I'm going to be sticking around the Canadian Rockies for the rest of the summer. Doing a bunch of some trips that have been on my bucket list, like some 2-nighters, three-nighters around here that I'm really excited for. And then we're heading to the Philippines for our honeymoon. Probably do some hiking around there. But I think nothing too crazy, just like kind of just the usual weekend warrior stuff for the next while. I think I want to get Steph down to Arizona and just have her experience that area next winter, especially when it's -30 here. It's nice to get down to some warmer temperatures over January, February.
See, that's when going south is actually a positive thing, right?
Yeah,
the warmer weather.
Exactly, and there's a large amount of Canadians in the Phoenix area, Florida and Phoenix. There's Canadians everywhere. When I go hiking in outside of Phoenix, half the people I meet are Canadian because they're retirees there. And I usually go during the week, so they're hiking in the mountains too. And it's like, hey, sorry, excuse me, sorry.
All right. Hey, Justin, you know where we are right now?
Where are we?
Hiking hacks.
That's right.
We're
at that time of the episode where you get to share your hiking hack with our listeners. Some bit of trail wisdom, some knowledge to make our listeners' next outdoor experience even better. What do you have for us? Did you already use it up by mistake?
I haven't used it up, and I'm not sure how common knowledge this one is. I don't hear it talked about very often. So yeah, hopefully it's a useful hack for the listeners out there. And that's when you get to camp, maybe you've been sweating a lot in your shoes. Maybe you've just recently had to like do a water crossing or something like that. And that's taking your socks off and then taking the insoles out of your shoes and then wearing your shoes barefoot without socks or insoles. All three, everything's going to dry better in that scenario. Your shoes are going to dry within the hour probably. Your feet are going to be drier and happier and healthier. Your socks and your insoles are going to dry out and probably stink less as well. I like to also just like give my socks a little bit of a rinse to get the grit and everything out of there. So yeah, that was something I did on the Great Divide Trail every day. Wash my socks and take my insoles and socks out of my shoes, and it really kept my feet in good shape.
That is fantastic. We have not heard that one yet, so I'm glad that you're able to drop that on us. Fantastic.
Nice. That's great.
All right. So there you have it. We are just about done here. Hope our listeners enjoyed our time with Justin. I want to thank him for joining us this week. Justin, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates on your latest adventures?
So everything's probably the best place is probably to head to the main YouTube channel, Justin Outdoors. And if people want to check out the podcast, it's mostly about gear, but it's the Gear Priority Podcast with Justin Outdoors. It's on Spotify, Apple, everywhere like that. Yeah, really, if you like to nerd out about gear, we get pretty nerdy.
I am. As soon as we're done here, I'm subscribing. Outstanding.
Awesome.
What can people expect to find on your YouTube channel?
A lot of stuff about gear, but a lot of trips as well. I'm usually out every week on a trip, and then I'll probably post about a quarter of them to my YouTube channel, depending on how interesting they are. So if they want to see some desert hiking, some pretty, as we talked about, extreme winter camping in the Canadian Rockies, then there's some good trips on there, and then some tips and tricks about gear.
Okay. Well, hey, remember to check out the pod on social media as well. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Justin, no TikTok yet?
I am on TikTok as well, TikTok and Instagram, but I'm working on them. I'm not a great TikToker.
Yeah, my daughter, half cap, she said, "Dad, you got to get on TikTok. That's where all the cool people are." So I started a TikTok account, and I really feel out of my element. So we'll
same here. I'm right there with you.
And if you have comments or clips you want to share, you can send it to me at johnfreakinmuir@gmail.com.
Off the beaten path.
Now, unfortunately, we can't always be on the trail, and when we're not, we need to find a way to get our adventure fix. So, Justin, I'm going to ask you to share some outdoor adventure media with our listeners to help them get by. This could be a book, a movie, documentary. We call this segment Off the Beaten Path. What do you have for us?
So the book, the big, I think it's called Big Wild, is really interesting. It's like an outdoor based book for a guy backpacks from Yellowstone all the way up to I think the Yukon border, but it's really cool adventure. Gets into some trouble, solves his problems, and really pushes his limits. It's a great book.
And did he read that grizzly bear book by Herrero before going?
I don't know if he had some encounters with grizzly bears, and yeah, they went better than mine, but still pretty sketchy.
Wow. Do you know Chattahoochee? You follow that account?
I don't know.
It's Chad Lubinsky. He goes by Chattahoochee on all his social media. And I think it was him that I was talking to. He heard a bear outside of his tent, and he pulled his bear spray. His tent flap was open, and he saw the bear there, and he went to spray it, and it hit the flap of the tent and sprayed, bounced back on him. So we talked about different ways to deploy bear spray. I mean, there's the alpha way where you can spray the bear, or there's the beta way where you spray yourself down with bear spray and make yourself really unappealing. That was the method.
Yeah, hopefully
accidentally. Yeah.
Yeah. Not just seasoning yourself.
Seasoning.
What have we not asked you?
And before we wrap things up, just one more segment for you called What Have I Not Asked You That You're Dying to Tell Us About? What do we miss tonight?
That's a good question. We covered a lot. We went through a lot of different things. I think if I could encourage people to try a bidet, I know we talked about a bidet, but if I could encourage people to try a bidet and then research Leave No Trace a little bit more. I think there's a lot. I think most people are familiar with the Leave No Trace principles. If you're not, definitely go check out lnt.org. Familiarize yourself with their principles. They have a lot of good tips and tricks out there. but even taking things to the next level, like using a backcountry bidet. I also use reusable like snack bags now, just so I'm not using as many Ziploc bags when I'm out on trail. So trying to do just those little things just to help our environment and make sure the trails are there for a long time.
Well said. Well said. All right, we are finished. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Justin. We wish you the very best in your future adventures and your upcoming nuptials. We hope you'll consider coming back at some point and sharing some more epic stories. As we close up, any shout outs to friends and family?
No, just maybe shout out to my fiance. Looking forward to getting married to her.
Nice. All right. Hey, thank you for tuning in. Always remember, the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if you had to suffer through a major poo explosion and things went south. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.